Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the news on Equinoxe television. Our major stories tonight: Amnesty International is urging the Cameroonian government to release militants of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement CRM political party who were arbitrarily arrested on September 22, 2020 during national protests. According to Amnesty International, some of these activists will complete their 5-year jail term by the end of September and so should be released. Away from that, the SDF national chairman and presidential candidate Honorable Joshua Osei says he's not against the idea of a consensus candidate from the opposition to challenge President Paul Biya's long-standing rule. In a recent interview with Radio France International, which is RFI, Joshua Osei emphasized on the importance of forming alliances before submitting a candidacy rather than after. Those are top stories tonight. The news in full in a jiffy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. Less than 3 weeks to the 2025 presidential elections in Cameroon, Amnesty International has issued a public statement calling on the government of Cameroon to release militants of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement political party. These activists were arbitrarily arrested on September 22, 2020 during national protests. And according to Amnesty International, some of the detained activists will complete their 5-year jail term by the end of September and so should therefore be released. We have greater details with Mala Glory.
In the report published on the 22nd of September 2025, Amnesty International calls on the Cameroonian government to release militants of the opposition party, the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, CRM. Over 500 of them were arbitrarily arrested on the 22nd of September 2020 for participating in a peaceful protest organized by the opposition party, MRC, in several cities across the country. And 36 are still in detention at the Condemns Central Prison in Yaoundé. Amnesty International urged the Cameroonian authorities to immediately release these individuals who have committed no crime other than to express their opinion, said Masosi Viewed, Amnesty International's Regional Director for West and Central Africa. The international organization says the arrest of a person exercising their rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly is considered as a violation on civic and political rights, adding that by the end of September, 24 of these prisoners will have served their 5-year sentence and must be released. Amnesty International notes that ahead of the 2025 presidential elections in Cameroon, arbitrary arrests have multiplied in the country. According to the report, on August 4th, at least 54 MRC supporters were arrested during pre-election dispute hearings in Yaoundé. And on August 9th, a man who posted videos calling for demonstration against the rejection of the candidacy of MRC leader Maurice Kamto was also arrested and has been held at Newberg prison. Following these numerous arrests, Amnesty International urged the government to end injustice in Cameroon.
Mala Glory reporting there. And in a recent outing dated September 22nd, the Cameroon Human Rights Commission, CHRC, condemns in strongest terms the use of hate speech, especially on social media, and the lack of tolerance among Cameroonians, which has contributed to violence. Although the Cameroonian government has been making efforts to curb this phenomenon, the CHRC believes that more still needs to be done through education. Additionally, it states that those who commit such crimes should be punished according to the law. Ase Lucilengu read through that document and compiled this report for the 6 p.m. news.
Cameroon Human Rights Commission raises an alarm over the increase in hate speech and incitement to violence on social media at a time when the country is in a crucial moment in the lead-up to the presidential election on October 12, 2025. The document, signed on the 22nd of September by the institution, notes a disturbing trend of derogatory words targeting various ethnic groups. These hateful content includes calls for violence and dehumanizing stereotypes, with specific examples highlighted from viral TikTok videos. The Commission believes that human rights education and media literacy strategies are effective in countering hate speech. It will help children, young people and the entire population to advocate for change by preserving peace among communities. CHRC further emphasizes that hate speech undermines human rights, social cohesion and national unity, potentially leading to severe societal divisions and violence. Recalling the law, Article 241/1 of the amended 2019 law states that perpetrators of hate speech are liable to criminal penalties. The Cameroon Human Rights Commission commends the efforts of authorities in the country in the fight against hate speech, such as the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunications, which recently launched a campaign in the context of the presidential election. The rights group urges other ministries like the Ministry of Territorial Administration to strengthen their units responsible for monitoring civil hatred and disinformation during this critical election period. Meanwhile, the Commission reaffirms its commitment to protecting human rights and emphasizes that freedom of expression should not justify hate speech. It calls for unified efforts to combat these issues, especially during this period of the presidential election.
Now to one of our major lead stories. Honorable Joshua O.C., SDF National Chairman and presidential candidate, says he's not opposed to the subject of a consensus candidate of the opposition to unseat 92-year-old President Paul Biya. He was responding to a question posed to him by a journalist on RFA recently. The successor of late Nijon Fundi thinks alliances should be made before submitting a candidacy and not after. Innocent Aze has more.
The SDF presidential candidate refused on Radio France International. He is opposed to the subject of a consensus opposition candidate much talked about by Cameroonians. Responding to a question on why he shows less concern, the late Nijon Fundi's successor said, I'm not opposed to a consensus candidate. I think alliances should be made before submitting a candidacy, not after. And so, once someone files for office, they should follow through. I'm one of those who believe that democracy is very important and that Cameroonians must be given the choice to freely choose their candidates and not have one imposed on them. With heightened fear, President Paul Biya might win with a fragmented opposition and disperse votes. Joshua's opinion was tested on this. There is no opposition as such. It's not a political party running, nor a political family. There are people who vote right, others who vote left, others who vote for their tribe, and others who objectively vote for the best political project, and so we should respect these choices. Honorable Joshua reminds he is not in the presidential race to replace the 92-year-old president, but to change a system that has wrecked Cameroon's emergence ship to the bottom of the ocean.
Il est évident que M. Maurice Kamto a une opinion qui compte et qui devrait être prise en considération, mais je ne suis pas dans cette course pour remplacer M. Biya. Je suis dans cette
I am in this race to change the system because I think that the fundamental problem in Cameroon is that of a hyper-presidentialist, hyper-centralized system which kills any opportunity for development, and so we absolutely must return to what we have been proposing since 1990, and that is why I am against this debate, moreover, on the advisability of putting together candidates, because I am the only one who carries the federal project in our country. That is to say, an executive federalism where we would give power to the people, and the other considerations of the other candidates interest me very little, because I am the only candidate who has this offer on the table. Making his stance clear, the SDF candidate is more focused on convincing Cameroonians welcome his project and to bless him to sit on the highly contested command throne, to be able to change the failed system under the Biya regime that has brought nothing but untold misery to the nation.
And that's it for this first part of the news. Cameroon Today comes up next. Tonight on Cameroon Today, we are taking you to Tegal. It is a locality in the Douala 3 subdivision that's in dire need of social amenities. Residents are struggling with inaccessible roads, lack of potable water, rising insecurity, and haphazard waste dumping. With the presidential election just around the corner, that is come October 12, 2025, the people of Tegal are calling on local authorities to take action. Smagic and Gabriel tells us more about the situation faced by the population of Tegal.
Douala 3 subdivision is the largest in terms of size in the littoral region. Tegal, one of the most populated neighborhoods, is found there. But as one gets into the neighborhood, the first thing you see is dirt. Because of the absence of bins, the streets have been transformed into dumping grounds with heaps of dirt littered here and there. The roads you see leads to Dakar and Sese neighborhood, but it's very difficult to move because of its poor state. They promised us pavement since, but till date, nothing, and elections are coming up. We are waiting for them. It has been several years. The residents here have been waiting for a road promised by the council. They promised opening roads for us and even went ahead to broke houses. We saw bulldozers here to trace the road, but now they say it's a filling station that is disturbing the work. Olivier adds it's better they could have left the road as it was before, because now children are unable to go to school as a result of floods. People leave Brazzaville to UCB neighborhood to fetch water. Water, as he mentioned, is a thorn on the flesh of the people in this neighborhood. We decided to follow a man who is frustrated because water doesn't flow from his tap. We are fetching water from a well. We are even lucky that we are in the rainy season, so water is always available. It's our neighbor who has it, and that is giving us the space to fetch it from his well. If he wasn't there, it would have been worse, and sometimes we even buy. We then moved to the main well that is helping residents of Tegal, owned by a certain Mama Yoyo. Everyone in the neighborhood fetch water from me because it is more secure than others. It's my father-in-law who left me with this well for several years now. Generally, we have meters everywhere, but sometimes we spend months without water. Added to that, rampant stealing of meters has become a common thing in the Tegal neighborhood. Thieves steal water meters and aggressions here, just normal thing. The people of Tegal have to move for at least 1 kilometer to the lone borehole in the neighborhood in order to get the precious liquid. But the real problem is coming with the rainy season gradually giving way.
And that element ends the second part of the news. Talking Point comes up next. My guest tonight on Talking Point is Joseph CHEBONKENG KALABUBSE. He is the President of the National Communication Council. Good evening. It's a pleasure to have you on Talking Point tonight. Journalists in the city of Douala just attended a workshop organized by the National Communication Council and the United Nations Organization. What was the necessity of this meeting, and what were the key takeaways from that workshop?
The Council organizing it with the support of the UN system, and what the Council is doing is what it has been doing before. This is another workshop to try to build the capacity of journalists as we gear up towards the presidential elections, to equip them particularly on issues that are disturbing: hate speech, disinformation, the advent of artificial intelligence, and how it can influence information sharing. And so within the next 3 days, the Council will use experts and come with its own content to be able to edify the press or press men and women on how they should go about. It's important to underline that the United Nations system has opted to provide equipment to the council so that the council can use the equipment in monitoring content within platforms, that's digital platforms, and that will be able to help the council to minimize the circulation of harmful content in platforms. It's difficult to stop that because we are dealing with this phenomenon of citizen journalism where it suffices to have a smartphone and you can be able to shoot a video or record some content and put it online. But because it will be a continuous process before, during and after the elections, we hope that it will enable us to be able to minimize. And we also are putting in place at the level of the council a crack team for information, for fact checking. And that team will be able to debunk or give credibility. Our website will be fed 24 hours round the clock. And so if you have any information or worry, you'll be able to call the council to be able to edify you on any given issue that has to do with the election.
Now, what does the National Communication Council expect from journalists before, during and after elections in terms of their reporting and coverage?
It's first of all a commitment on the part of the journalists themselves. And it's necessary for them to understand that the microphone they have or the pen they hold can be transformed into a bomb or a pistol if what is churned out through that microphone is provocative or inciting. And so the journalist has a social responsibility towards the public that he or she is serving, to protect the integrity of that public and to ensure that there is harmony. And it's what you communicate that builds the harmony in the minds of those who listen to you or those who watch you, because the manner in which you build it determines how they formulate images, actions, and opinions. And that's why we feel that journalists have a very, very important role during this period. Secondly, there is the moral obligation that goes with the responsibility which each journalist has. Because there are things which you can withhold because you are a journalist, because in broadcasting some harmful content, it can instead destroy than build. That's the moral responsibility which you carry. And that nobody will tell you that. But it is the responsibility. That's why the journalists have over the years crafted for themselves this position of the fourth estate of the Republic. No one gave it to the press. It's the press that made itself indispensable, because they are those who build and they are those who can break down.
You earlier highlighted the prevalence of citizen journalism and equally, which is known as armchair journalism, which is having a great impact on the practice of journalism in Cameroon. Now, what steps has the NCC taken to regulate citizen journalism, and what are the potential consequences for the non-compliance?
Medicine to that, because citizen journalism has been born because of technological evolution. And each citizen is free to shoot a video, record something, and publish. But he or she does not know the consequence of what he or she might be putting online for public consumption. That's why the journalist who has been trained has a preponderant role in information building and sharing, because it is he who has been trained that knows the consequences of publishing a content. Secondly, the journalist has to go online and provide alternative sources of information. My advice is use online publications as tip-offs, and you can now treat the story when you get it from there. And when you provide alternative sources, people who listen to you or who watch you would always refer to your website to get the facts and figures about a given story. And so that's why within this period, the Council has said that all audiovisual media organs should suspend politically oriented programs, call-in programs, because you cannot master what will happen within the discussion or within the dialogue. Secondly, we have observed over the years that there's a lot of uncontrolled utterances in debate and call-in programs. And so for the sake of equity, equality and equilibrium, the Council has requested that just for 15 days, all proprietors of audiovisual media organs should suspend all politically oriented content, and in place of that, create airspace for political propaganda and news coverages in relation to the presidential election. That way, those who watch you and those who listen can be able to watch the candidates, listen to the candidates, and be able to be informed about what each candidate is proposing if he or she is elected as President of the Republic.
What specific advice, or let's say guidance, will you offer to English-speaking journalists on respecting ethics and professional standards during this critical period?
So far, so good. We haven't sanctioned many of you, not because you have not erred, but because we think that it's not sanctioning that will correct you. That's why we have addressed warning letters to some of you and also calls you to indicate that what you're doing is not professionally correct. And we think that by educating you and by also calling you to order, that will help you. But I want to congratulate you because we don't have as many complaints concerning English-speaking journalists at the level of the Council as we do with those who use the French language for work. And I would want to add that as we look forward to this crucial presidential election, we expect the best from you. And you know that journalism was crafted in the English language. And so it's a profession which we admire so much. And so when Professor Laswell talked about his 5 W's and 1 H, we would expect you to put that into use as much as possible, and you would move on broken bottles without being hurt.
Joseph CHEBONKENG KALABUBSE, President of the National Communication Council, thank you so much for your time. And that's what put a cap to today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for always staying with us. Stay in the company of interesting programs on Equinoxe Television. Bye-bye for now. See you tomorrow, same time, God willing.